So as we've been discussing with surveys, the getting this information and getting people to participate can oftentimes be challenging. So one of the ways that people try and get around this is do use of telephone surveys. This is justified by the fact that whether it be a traditional landline phone like my grandma may have had, or a cell phone, that over 95% of households have a phone. Again, one of the things in doing research is really important is just time and money. You want to minimize as much of your own that you have to devote to these exercises as possible. So telephone surveys obviously give minimal costs. There's more personal safety, as I talked about before, like, that when we are trying to get information and data, public health data about, Black and Hispanic communities. Some people may be concerned about, the safety challenges, and those are alleviated through telephone surveys. But there are many illicit phone numbers. Again, a lot of cell phones where if you're trying to, if you're aiming to get, have people that live in Chicago to participate in your survey, for example, you might call my cell phone because it has a Chicago number, but obviously I'm not in Chicago. So I may not be the person that, you want to participate. And if you call my cell phone, 95 times out of 100, Latasia, you go into voicemail. So this also makes it where it can be challenging to get some of this information as well. As always, again, make sure you know some of the pros and cons of each of these various methods. And even within telephone surveys, there can be multiple ways that these are set up. They include random digit dialing and computer assisted telephone interviewing. And again, as you get this information down, it's available to you. Please note that this is not designed for you to be writing down every single word. All these words have been written down for you already in your textbook. This is the same place I got it from. So if I was sitting in this class, I definitely would not be writing every single word down. And of course, I was generally a student who read before class, so my notes was usually a lot better than whatever the lane professor was going to be providing me. You can do the same for your lane professor. But do not feel like you're going to, you need to write down every single word. There isn't enough time to allow you all to do that. Shorthand, shorthand, shorthand. And the most important, like writing out these words down, like last week you wrote down the Hawthorne effect. I saw some of y'all. This week, nobody had any idea what I was talking about. So it doesn't really matter writing these things down. The important thing is that you're writing them down in such a way that you're going to remember and understand them. And you can do that a lot better with your words.
Dr. Muhammad.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I don't know what's going on with my headphones. Can you still hear me?
Now I can hear you.
Okay, so you had said, so I wanted to see as far as like my definition. I use like an example from my previous class. Like, so basically I wanted to say like people performance changes whenever like if they're being evaluated. So like the example I had used from my previous class, which was like a track athlete. So a track and performance and practice differs from actual competition day.
Absolutely. And the main variable there will be the presence of other people, Does that affect performance? So the same way, how I'll throw an example that they work faster when they saw their boss was looking. And I think that's true of most of us. Same way, again, you cooking, doing chores around the crib. If your mama is looking, your grandma's looking, you're a lot more swift. And it works in the opposite direction as well, that some people, again, will perform worse. There are some people that when they're practicing the piano and there's nobody around, they're great. In front of that stage, it might be different. So in terms, again, of telephone surveys, again, you can do random digit dialing. It's just exactly what it sounds like. Just random numbers are selected. as opposed to going to do 799-5383, then 799-5384. It just goes totally random. And increasingly, more and more people are using the technology. The technologies that have advanced over the last couple of decades really allow you to do research in ways that are even more expansive and can get things done more quickly. So a lot of people use a computer assisted. I think most telephone surveys today are computer assisted, where your phone may ring and a computer is saying, "Hey, we'd like to ask you some questions about the upcoming presidential election. Press 1 to continue. Press," and most of the time people hang up. So that's a computer assisted telephone survey. Again, you ain't got to be writing down all these words. Just know what they are. That's what I'm looking for. And without having to be prompted by your notes. You all are more than capable and intelligent enough to do that. All these things, you're almost certainly going to have to learn next fall anyway when you're in graduate school. Let's get them done early. So a mixed mode survey, right? You can combine different research techniques where you might do a little bit of a matrix survey. You might do some interviews. You might do some field observations. A lot of information is very difficult. The same way we talked about, right? The original thing we were trying to find out is your boyfriend cheated. That the best way to try and get that information is to try and find out as many ways as possible. Ask him questions and look at his body language. Maybe set up a thirst trap too. All these things will get you information. So in the same way, people use many methods to try and answer one question. Again, comparison of different surveys. We talked about, self-administered. You can also do interviews. Again, do not just, our goal here is not just to write this stuff down from here into a book. Our goal is to get this information in a condensed fashion in a way that allows us to understand it a lot more quickly. If that understanding isn't happening, I need you all to let me know at the time. What we're trying to understand here is, why would some people use self-administered surveys? Why would some people use interview surveys? The self-administered questionnaires, again, are cheaper and faster. As opposed to me having to take time to ask you all these questions, I can just give it here, you do it yourself. You don't need a lot of staff for self-administered questionnaires. And even though, interviews can be helpful to get more broad-based information, some information, it might be if it's sensitive information, people might be more willing to answer your questions if it's an anonymous survey, as opposed to somebody looking them in the face and they have to answer this question. And again, as a researcher, you'll get a sense of which questions those are. Are there any questions so far about anything we discussed today?
No, sir.
Yeah, telephone and online surveys, more and more individuals are doing them online as well. There's software, again, as opposed to having to take as much time to design and set up your questions. There's a lot of online technology that will allow you, that can do that for you. It allows even more anonymity. Again, cheaper and more time efficient. Again, you see a common denominator here that, again, once you get on to the doctoral level, most of that research, again, you have to conduct yourself and you got to find time and money to do it. That's one of the things, I'm sure you've heard about grants and fellowships. I'm actually in the process of applying for a couple now where people can give me money to go do some research. But if you got to do it on your own, you know, you want to do it as quickest time as possible, and you want it to be as cheap as possible. So telephone surveys can have a benefit of that as well. Some of the strengths of survey research, again, if you want to get large populations, you can get 500 people to answer a survey, and you can get 500 people to let you observe them a lot more quickly. You can have standardized questions, meaning that, you know, again, everybody gets asked the same thing. So we've gone through quite a bit today. Tell me some things you learned so far without reading your notes to me. What are some things that you have learned so far here today? Anything at all. Without reading your notes to me. Again, we just sat here together. We had an hour-long conversation. Tell me some things we talked about.
As far as the contingency question, it explained it like more in depth, like far as like explain like the if yes, explain why, or have the multiple choices for why you pick yes.
Good. Definitely something you want to familiarize yourself with. Anything else? Anything at all?
Right, exactly.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Nashai.
I'm so sorry.
You good.
Right, exactly what's being said, and don't traumatize a person while you interviewing them.
Okay. Other thoughts? Anything else that you learned here so far today?
The difference between open-ended and closed-ended questions.
Good. What are those? Somebody else.
Okay.
What are open and closed-ended questions?
Open-ended is when they write it out themselves, and closed-ended is when it's like a survey type.
Yeah, both can be survey type questions. Janai, what's the difference between an open and closed-ended?
The closed-ended provides like multiple choice as far as you to answer it, and then you have to go more in depth into explaining with the open-ended question.
With an open-ended, no choices are given. With an open-ended, no choices are given. I just asked you a question, and you got to know the answer or not. With the closed-ended, it's choices I give you. So maybe you know the answer, or maybe you just guess the correct of these choices. Like with multiple choice questions, again, student got 80% on multiple choice, the short answer, questions like these, for example, it might be more of a struggle. Anything else that you learned so far? Again, we've been talking here for an hour. I've wasted your time. So tell me some things that you learned during this time.
Real quick question: will the pop quiz be open-ended or closed-ended?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. It would be totally closed-ended. Like again, closed-ended questions do not measure intelligence whatsoever. A lot of teachers give out a whole bunch of multiple choice questions so they can feel good about themselves, and the students can as well. But then we go to grad school and into our professions, and we found out, wow, I didn't really know these things. And you're capable of answering both questions, so don't be intimidated by those. That's why we want to use practice like this. And if there's some open-ended questions that you couldn't answer today that you're struggling with, what's the solution to that problem? Because I'm a believer that every problem got a solution. That then ain't just, oh my God, I don't know this stuff. Oh my God, what am I going to do? Oh my God, like what's the solution? Are there solutions? Perhaps there are not. We'll continue on with the lecture. So secondary analysis, again, is where you collect data from another researcher, but you have to analyze that data for your own. You have to analyze again. They may have collected data where they're looking for something totally different. They don't have the same research question as yours. And doing research right now about, like political power in the 21st century, I need to do some research about political power in previous times. So I'm looking at research on ancient Sumeria, Egypt, Greece, where they weren't trying to find out the things I'm looking for, but I can, as opposed to having to go and get all this information originally for myself, which I don't have the time. I'm not going to be able to fly over to Sumeria and get this information right now. Fly to Iraq. We can use other sources to help us glean the data that's important for us. Again, as we talked about, we'll leave it there for now. I did want to get into your primary method before we left for the day. Again, keep in mind that, as we talked about over the next couple of weeks, more of our focus will be on one-on-one discussions. So in terms of completing the research, I do know that to my understanding, it is not too late to drop this class if you feel like you're a little bit behind and overwhelmed. Because again, it does, if you're behind now, it gets very difficult to get caught up. So you got time to kind of like rectify that situation for a class that's offered every semester. Otherwise, be checking your emails and we'll proceed. Again, this week, we're going to still be on our normal schedule, but I'll email to set up some appointments with you all to kind of work on the research in more detail and give you more individualized attention. But what I need you all to do this week is to make sure that you get as many relevant sources as possible.